This isn't a completely dead eye. It still works a bit. The problem is, the only thing I can see with it is Joey Cusack. And it can see right through him. Right through your husband, Edie. I see what's inside him, what makes him tick. He's still the same guy.
Yeah. Be careful. Spoilers are a little bit for History of Violence.
Yeah, a little bit of spoilers.
But we'll get there, so you guys just hang tight.
Yeah, from Ed Harris's character in History of Violence.
Carl Fogarty.
Carl Fogarty, one of the scariest characters that I've witnessed in a movie in a long time.
Interesting.
Quite terrifying that man is. If he showed up at my doorstep and told me I was somebody else, I'd probably believe him out of the sheer fear going through my body. So yeah, welcome to the 66th episode of the Neon Crew podcast. My name is Kyle.
And I'm McClain.
What better way to celebrate 66 with Cronenberg? Because we got double Cronenberg this episode.
Yeah, we just need one more 6.
I know, right? Well, we've got a while before we get to that.
Yeah, true.
And at the rate we're going, we'll only be 238 years old.
Yeah.
Probably. But by then they will have figured out how immortality works. They will have unlocked the secrets.
Well, we'll have to buy it and just go through the infinity pool to get it.
Oh, yeah, exactly. They'll let us, as two stupid-ass podcast hosts, use the resources to become immortal. We'll be the first ones to test that.
Well, this podcast will span time, so...
Well, speaking of spanning time, I've got a bit of news and also kind of a topic that I want to bring to your attention.
Okay.
Get your thoughts on.
Yeah.
So, it was announced recently that Gladiator 2... You know,
Jesus.
Yep. I knew that was going to be the reaction when I read that. It was announced that Gladiator 2 was going to be a thing, directed by Ridley Scott. Upcoming movie with Paul Mescal, and I guess it's got Denzel Washington in it as well.
Yeah.
And the budget for it ballooned. Surprise, surprise. So it went from $160 million to, I want you to guess the amount.
You said ballooned.
Yes.
160.
Yep.
I'm going to go to 250.
$310 million.
Christ.
And I want to bring this up not only because I think that in itself is just a ridiculous number. For a movie to balloon to that is like just kind of like a passion project from Ridley Scott. And it doubled. And that's not even considering like the marketing costs. But I feel like that's a very kind of, I don't want to say irresponsible, but like, why is the budget so big? Why are budgets so big lately for movies?
I don't know what causes. I go back to our discussion on episode 1.
Throwing it back.
The Phantom Menace one.
Oh, that episode.
Yeah, not only God Forgives, but
okay.
that one. And you try to. Looking at what goes in with the prop designs, the sets, scheduling. I don't know if these actors get paid more if it runs over schedule. CGI getting incorporated now, depending on where they're filming at. Maybe taxes getting involved. So, for it to double though, that's more alarming to me. It sounds even shittier than. Sorry, pardon my French. It sounds even worse than what we had already kind of were expecting with it.
Well, speaking of pardon my French, what was the budget for Napoleon?
I would have guessed like 200 something.
That has to be 200 at at the most 200 something. And I don't even know if that movie cracked 200 million at the box office.
It's Ridley Scott has got to be using his name to pull some serious dough.
All right.
Either that or some producer on there is forking it up.
So the budget for Napoleon between 130 and 200 million. So you were right on the money. And the box office 220.7 million. So it didn't even really make a profit.
No, not when you figure in distribution and marketing, right? That they don't.
The good rule of thumb is for the budget is you take it and you double it, and that's what the marketing costs are on top of the budget for the film.
Oh, Jesus.
So Ridley Scott ostensibly is going to have to make $800 million at least to break even with Gladiator 2.
Does it... I guess I was about to say, I got to imagine there's a producer on there or someone, because like I don't really know, and maybe if you guys listen, you'll be able to chime in, specifically looking at my brother, for why budgets. Because I got to imagine it's got to deal with scheduling. And, like, you think of these projects, right? And you have the project manager is essentially the director. So if they're running over budget, I mean, you got to put everything into, like, feeding the people, housing them. You have all the extra, not extras like in the acting world, but the production extras that help out. And I'm not,
Right.
I don't want to say it in a calloused way.
No, I totally get what you mean.
I don't exactly know the titles of everyone though, but like you're paying that, they might be hourly. So like when you talk about something, it's definitely dealing with scheduling. And if they're not hitting scheduling, that probably tells me that someone got into a beef with someone, or there's rewrites going on and they're bringing everyone back on.
Yeah, like I'm wondering if it's just sort of a product of how much manpower and
Yes.
how much resources and CGI and like all these different things are just going into the movie wholesale, or if there was some development trouble along the way.
Yeah.
And it kind of pulled a Waterworld where it's like, okay, we have to like double the budget now because something fucked up severely. And we
Yeah.
have to do like reshoots and rewrites and all this shit. Like, I'm sure we're going to hear about it after the movie gets released. But it's one of those trends in Hollywood that I've noticed, especially this past year when it comes to budgets for films. And I feel like it would be one thing if we could see where the budget went, right? In terms of not only like the quality of the special effects, but the quality of the movie overall.
Yeah.
But then you get movies like, you good?
Yeah. Did you hear? That wasn't my back.
Yeah, no, that was Mac rolling the chair. We're still recording, so we're good.
We're good. There was no delay.
If this place catches on fire, we'll know whose fault it is. Insurance companies.
The people doing the water line.
Exactly. Village of... not to dox myself. I might censor that. In case the one dude in Denmark gets an idea.
Right.
But no, we get movies like Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, or The Marvels, or Aquaman 2: The Lost Kingdom, where like you look at the ballooned budgets of those films and you go, okay, where did the money go? Like, why are these movies so subpar? Not only in terms of like just overall narrative and story quality, but like just special effects. I can't look at anything in the Marvels and think, oh, this is like a nearly $300 million movie.
No, I like I said, I mean, and if I had to guess with those, it shocks me because you have Ridley Scott, who's an accomplished director. Like those that you labeled off, I would have to imagine are newer directors coming to. You got.
Yeah.
I mean, like these guys are coming up. They have to get all these people in front of green screens. You're acting on air essentially. You have people that you're like operating with that you don't really have chemistry with, you know. So like I gotta imagine like, and it fits back into the scheduling aspect of it, where you might waste a whole day trying to grab something on green screen and have to do it again.
Yeah.
And then you're looking at someone that's now like going back to the Star Wars, where in the editing bay, hey, we got 2 good minutes of this here. I want to splice that with the 8 good minutes here, you know, and now that guy's going, well, you just doubled my work from 4 hours to 8 hours, and this is for a 5-minute scene, you know, and I would have to imagine there's a lot of that going on. In terms of like Hollywood now, I don't know if it's just running rampant or where money's coming from. I mean, it seems ludicrous. Like, back in the day, if something went over budget, like I feel like you'd be hamstrung. Like, hey, if this doesn't make the money back, you're done.
Yeah.
You know, and now it's just like
they would never give you a check again for anything more than like $20 million. We've
talked about directors where they've gone either over budget or they weren't even close to hitting, you know, the marginal line of making their money back, or just breaking zero, and we don't really see them anymore.
It would be interesting if this was in a time where it was like pre-COVID, where we were getting movies back to back to back that were like making billions of dollars, that were like huge event films that were making tons of money. Like that would be one thing in of itself, but I don't see the justification for these huge budgets in a time where like we haven't really fully recovered from the events of COVID affecting movie theaters in order to really like kind of like rein it in like that.
Yeah. And I'm also thinking too, there might be they might have some built-in stuff here, or maybe that they're really seeing that the subscription services are fronting a lot of money, or maybe not fronting's the right word, but like they're capturing a lot of what they're not getting in theaters.
You
know,
think
like,
maybe like the revenue from the streaming services after it comes out in theaters,
whatever the
justifies
residuals, yeah,
some of it?
yeah. Like Paramount might already own the rights to Gladiator 2, so we'll release it in theaters. We'll get what we get there, and now you guys are gonna see 5% or 1% of total revenue that comes in through subscriptions.
Yeah.
Like, I'm curious as to this is the part of the game that we're not really accustomed to.
Yeah, it's still fairly new.
Yeah, because I mean, it's only been talked about happening, and now all of a sudden,
It doesn't help that Netflix doesn't release its financial records typically.
Why would they? So they have to pay taxes.
Right. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's ludicrous. Yeah. No, you're fine. I mean, and that's what that's my thought on it, at least. Because I mean, if we're starting to see some of these things balloon like this, the studios might just be saying, "Hey, whatever it takes," because we just need it to hit Paramount Plus or HBO Max, or we just need it to hit one of Hulu. Like, as long as we can get it on there, we'll capture some of whatever we're not going to get in theaters.
Yeah, they might be just throwing money because they know that streaming services are going to pick up the rest of the revenue, make up for some of the profits. I mean, shit, Morbius became profitable after it went to Netflix. But then also maybe they're, like you said, doing it too so that way it's kind of a gamble. Like, we throw all this money at this thing, maybe eventually it'll come out on top and we can get movies back to where they used to be.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's interesting. I haven't really thought about it, but I mean, a lot of the time, the movies that aren't that good are the ones that always go over budget, and there's a reason why it goes over budget.
Yeah.
I want to say The Godfather went over budget, and I think there are times where it might necessitate, hey, we scoped this out at a lower cost than what it was, but back then directors had to put their name to the stake.
Yeah.
Like when Coppola did it, I mean, it was, this movie will be successful or else I won't ever direct again. That's why you got to do it, because it was a pretty high stakes game at that point. I mean, if you didn't come out with something good, Yeah,
there seems to be more than ever in Hollywood like a big safety net for directors and writers and filmmakers in general to take these big risks, and then if they fuck up, it's not the end of their career necessarily. Right. They might not be able to like make movies as big as that ever again, but like, they still have a place and they still have a name. I mean, shit, look at the writers for Madam Web. They did all sorts of movies before that, and they still have careers.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think there is too something to be said with like, because some of the movies that you named off went to Disney. You got Marvel Studio.
2 out of those 3 movies probably went to Disney Plus, right?
And then Aquaman, I think DCU's got something in with HBO Max. So it makes you wonder too. I mean, I don't know if they're just we talked about this numerous times before. After was it Feige that did the Marvel universe, right? It was like, well, once his vision's done, what are we going to get with Marvel products? Like, I feel like right now they're just like, we're a cash cow and we could care less. And I think it's really hurting the product, but they're not seeing the backlash from fans because people are watching whatever comes out.
Right. They're too busy seeing the waterfalls of money that are coming down in front of their eyes.
Yes.
Cool. Well, we'll have to wait and see how Gladiator 2
yeah,
does.
we will. I might be like coming in one day and just being like, I really got to eat my words.
Yeah, you got to eat crow.
Yeah.
As you've said before.
That movie was so good.
Yeah. Best of 2025?
Dude, I can't wait till that thing freaking just comes out and flops in 3 weeks.
I'm so curious. I mean, I might be eating crow by saying this, but I can't imagine it being profitable, especially with that budget. Like,
no one's going to
Jesus.
No one's going to theaters now. So I mean, and I don't know how the revenue comes out or the profits come out or like whatever it gets reported on.
Maybe Ridley Scott is hoping that by then he'll reach like Taylor Swift concert status, and then he can play Gladiator 2 in a concert venue and make money that way.
One of the streaming service people are there and just say, finish it.
Yeah.
Just get it to the platform.
Yeah. Just get it to the finish line, Ridley.
It's like, forget what's the dude's name in Lord of the Rings 2. He had the king of the Rohirrim and Wormtongue or Snaketail or something like that.
Wormtongue, yeah.
Wormtongue, and he's whispering in the king's ear. And
That's Gandalf the Grey.
Yeah.
We do not welcome him.
Gandalf, Stormcrow, a truly good jest, sire. Yeah.
Lord of the Rings in the works eventually. Probably.
Eventually.
That'd be like a Spider-Man where I'd probably have to do multiple episodes. So speaking of Wormtongue, worms and tongues are both very gross. And you know what else is gross? A lot of the shit that happens in Infinity Pool. Let me tell you.
Yeah. Are you going to do that one? Oh, no, I get to do that.
You get to do Infinity Pool.
Yes. Let's pull it up here.
Yes.
Yeah, because I forgot you recommended A History of Violence that we'll talk about.
Sometimes I recommend films that you have to think, did Mac recommend that or did Kyle recommend that? 'Cause I throw you a curveball every once in a while.
That was an interesting one. That's boy, that one's almost 20 years old. Infinity Pool's not. It's almost 20 days old. Longer than that.
It's freshly birthed, much like some of the other things in this film.
Yes. Yeah, we'll get to it. Spoilers coming up or maybe I'll do that and then say that. All right, Infinity Pool, 2023 film, came out in January and hit Hulu pretty quick. Directed and written by Brandon Cronenberg. I don't know if there was another writer associated or not.
I don't think so.
It's starring Alexander Skarsgård as James Foster, Mia Goth as Gabby Bauer, Cleopatra Coleman as M. Foster, and a lot more unrecognizable names, but Jaleel Lespert as Alvin Bauer. And essentially what it is we get thrown into this little bit of an island resort that James and M are visiting, the Fosters, as James is I don't want to say failed writer, but he hasn't written a book in 6 years. He's looking for some inspiration. So they go to the resort and he's hoping that he can get some real life events going on that will help him out with his book. And he runs into Gabby Bauer, played by Mia Goth, and they have a conversation, and they kind of become friendly, and you can tell that there's some things going on, and you're not really sure what's about to ensue as James becomes a little bit more infatuated with her and everything that's going on. They end up leaving the resort, which is a big-time no-no, in someone's car. They go to the beach. They enjoy themselves, one person specifically, and on the way back, James gets into an accident, drinking and driving, perhaps, and the police come and detain him and M, essentially, and say, with a boatload of money, we can make a duplicate of you, and we can still get retribution. You know, the kids of the family in this world are allowed to kill whoever killed a family member of theirs, if there are family members to have someone killed or killing.
Carry out the execution.
Carry out. I like that. Yeah, carry out the execution. So we get there with James, and they front the money, and madness pursues.
Yes.
So
pursues, ensues, double sues, triple sues.
Man, every type of sue.
Yeah, Mary Sue.
Yeah. So I was trying to think if there was a Susan in the thing.
I don't think so.
There might. Yeah. The names kind of got lost on me once they hit the party.
Yeah. When everything becomes literally a blur.
Oh my God. Yeah. So, this movie, I just want to say this. I can say it. It came out in January, right? It hit theaters. I think it was January 23rd, something like that.
It says 27th, but for Canada. But I mean,
not this again. This is
it's funny because
point all over.
Well, the Cronenbergs are Canadian.
Yes, that's what. So it made it to a film festival.
Yeah, Sundance Film Festival. Actually, only 4 days before January 22nd.
So I read that there was an NC-17 rating of this film, and he actually had to trim a bunch of stuff to get it to rated R to release it in theaters. But at Sundance, they released the NC-17 version, which I'm Somewhat curious and not curious.
Yeah, I didn't see anything as far as like differences or alternate scenes when I read up about this film. There's not that much information about it that's just
sure
readily available.
Probably more tits and sex in it.
Yeah.
Or violence.
The meat and potatoes of the
Yeah,
film.
what you want when you go to a Cronenberg film.
Yeah, I want to pull my dick out when I see this movie.
But on Facebook I'd seen this thing and I'd only seen, it's kind of funny, like I don't know if everyone else is like this, but like I think I've seen enough films and like trailers and pictures and whatnot to get good senses of it. Now mind you, I hadn't seen a trailer or anything for this, just on Facebook, and a couple pictures or stills from the poster. I can't quite remember, but anyways, I was telling Jasmine and my parents, two different sets. I was like, this film is supposed to be like a surreal horror film. I'm actually proud of myself for having seen only a couple stills and no like real video evidence to like almost get this on the head.
You kind of get the vibe with it, and I think the name Cronenberg, unless you're like not into movies that much, like you're gonna know that name has an association.
And I might have. I don't want to say I had no idea, but I don't think I knew much about this film. I think after you said it, I was like, that makes sense. But yeah, if you know the name Cronenberg, you probably have a pretty decent idea. I would say decent. I still was not overly prepared for everything.
Yeah.
But
I thought about my quote for the episode, just being James.
Oh my God! Yeah,
Jamesy. That's Mia Goth and her lovely performance in the film. No, I'm kind of in the same boat as you, where like I had a very peripheral experience with this film before watching it. Didn't really know that much about it other than like seeing the poster and seeing other people's ratings and reviews on it. It being a little more around like the mixed range, like mixed to positive range.
Oh.
And, this is a film that I think it has a lot going for it, but it's one of those films where, like I kind of said before, like the discussion could sway me. This could go, I think, either way for me in terms of like, oh, this is like an entertaining film that has some obvious flaws, which I do think. Or maybe it's got a little bit more going on than what I think is happening on the surface. But I think we kind of have to talk this out.
Yeah.
This is one where like the discussion is going to unfold before me.
So I had... This film's a mess.
Agreed.
Yes. This film's a mess. From what I read about Cronenberg, which made a lot of sense, is that he got into a writer's block, so he came out with Possessor. He wasn't sure what he was going to do next, and this film kind of started out from like a 20-minute short story, and he actually, when he was a kid, which I guess it's funny too, like when you talk about directors and you just think about people having money. They went down to the Dominican Republic and he went to a resort like this. He said it was really bizarre because you get down there, they blindfold you, they drive you in the middle of the night to the resort, so you can't see everything around you. Like you get the moonlit night to kind of cascade over the land or the terrain to see what you're driving into. He's like, you get to the resort, it's barbed wired fence all around you. You're not allowed to leave the resort. They set up a little town in the resort, much like the Chinese restaurant and the disco ball area or whatever they called it. And he said, they were there for 10 days or something like that. And then when they left, they left in the middle of the day because you've already been part of this area. And he said, you're just driving by and you see all the slums and the poverty and the place was just, like in the middle of nowhere, there's this Disneyland-esque area surrounded by people that are just struggling to live. Mm-hmm. And that's where he got a lot of his inspiration. But you can also tell, too, that with the writing, that's about as far as the inspiration went. And then it turned into... I felt like there was a lot of different themes strewn in here.
That's funny because the entire time I was watching this film, like for the most part, I kept thinking to myself, where is this leading?
Yes.
What's he trying to say with this movie?
Yes.
What is the point?
Yes.
And I'm kind of glad that I gave myself a few days or like almost a week of time thinking about this movie and processing it, because I think I watched it on Wednesday last week. So I've had some time to sit with it. And the most that I can come up with is just thinking about Brandon Cronenberg, being the son of David Cronenberg.
Yes.
You're going to have a lot to live up to because your dad already has such a big name. So I'm thinking what happened with this movie is he kind of, through Alexander Skarsgård's character, did a self-insert of, this is how I feel currently, and this is how I would feel if I were going back in time to that vacation I was thinking about, just being stuck in this weird, unflattering limbo.
It's
where like I have to essentially like create art and live up to my dad's name, and people are going to tell me that I'm doing a great job. People are going to come up to me and say like, oh, I really like what you did. I really like this. Kind of the same way that Mia Goth went up to James and said, oh, I love your book.
Yeah.
But then it's kind of that experience that you have as an artist, especially when you live in the shadow of such a famous director, where you make a movie and reviews come out and they are very critical of your work, not just from the film itself as a standpoint, but forever comparing it to the work of your dad. And so that kind of like buries a lot of like the emotions that you have and the confidence that you might have gotten if you weren't the son of David Cronenberg and you weren't like just trying to like claw your way up as an up and coming director on your own.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of those feelings reflected in that scene where Mia Goth is like chastising him as they're walking and he's like next to the car.
There's 100%. There's another scene too there that it's when it clicks for me.
Which one?
When she milked him. I'm watching this. I was like, oh, this is Cronenberg. This is kind of going back to suckling at the mother's teat, becoming, birth upon rebirth or whatever you want to say. Maybe he's finally feeling like he's shedding some of that skin, or maybe he's just at the lowest level of low and needing that comfort, and this is where he can find it from.
Yeah, because maybe like I'm thinking the movie is sort of representative that way, where he starts out, he doesn't really think that highly of himself, but he's looking for inspiration. So then some people come along and they kind of set him on this path to give him a lot of praise. They give him a lot of like compliments.
Pilgrim's journey.
Right, and it's a lot of like surrounding yourself with people who are, I don't want to say yes men, but they essentially like sing your praises and they tell you do a great job. Sycophants.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you do something happens and it quickly turns on you. And that can be the experience of an artist 100%.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure that that's what he was trying to convey with at least some of what this movie was going for.
Some of it. I mean, and I'm not disagreeing because I think, like I said, there are a lot of different themes in this movie that I think that's why I called it a mess. I mean, I think there's so much thrown in here between you have, one of the things that happens early on is that if you have enough money, you can get out of trouble. And it's kind of maybe a reflection of the world today where we see a lot of these people that do really dumb things, things that, with the law and justice shouldn't be condemned or looked away from. And yet if you have, abundant amount of resources, you can pay your way out of trouble. And you get into this lifestyle that the rich were into on this little island of, hey, we've got enough money, we can do whatever we want, look at us go. And some of the things, and I really hadn't really thought about the term at all, and I know I've heard it before, but hedonistic lifestyle.
Yeah.
And a lot of that going on, living simply up to the pleasures of the highest magnitude, to say what it, anyways, that was one of the themes that I was getting from. The Cronenberg thing popped out. I'm trying to remember too. I felt like there was something in there with him, watching yourself die, and I don't know if that was
that was more of like the more kind of like, I guess, surreal. Maybe is not the word for it, but like that kind of. It almost felt like an extended episode of Black Mirror at points, where it kind of makes you question, like...
Surreal works fine, I think.
Yeah, and the movie even, like, asked the same question with one of the characters, was like, how do you know that the person you watched died was not the original you?
Another point in the movie that they could have easily just focused on that. right? Like,
Well, it's one of those things where, like you said, there's a lot going on. It doesn't really feel like he's landing on one specific thing. He's trying to touch on like at least 3 different things at once
that we've talked about.
That we've talked about.
There could be more,
right? And we could very well dig them up in this conversation, but it's like none of these are really expanded on further past the surface level. Like they're conceptual, they come up, they're discussed, and then they're quickly kind of just brushed aside. There's really no deeper delving into it. Not that I think like a lot of movies need to delve that deep into it, but with this one specifically, I think it would have helped give the movie a sense of purpose and have a point for it to drive towards.
And like watching this, I'm thinking in my head, like there's enough going on with it and rich enough content at certain points that if he would have stayed focused to one of them, he would have had a much better film. I think he could have had a lot of whatever he was trying to get across. I mean, at some points this seems like really artsy fartsy to me, and not to say it in like a, well, I am saying it in a negative way, but like in a shock and awe value, as opposed to actually like a deeper meaning or a sense of driving the film. It's kind of like sometimes it's like, oh, my dad did this, so I'm gonna do this. And
really like kind of honing in on some of the like body horror aspects or like the gore, like just the unsettling nature of it.
Even the orgy that they had after they're doing the root, and it's just like it's going on and on. And
you didn't like that? It went on for like nearly 5 minutes.
Well, I mean, it's every time I see that now, I always think of 2001. I'm just thinking like how
all the colors and like the fucking psychedelic shit going on.
And it's like it's fun. Like that's fun. I mean, this is like you can have a good time with this or laugh or kind of like get like in the, oh man, this is really twisted. But at the end of the day, it's still like, what's your point? Is it just in there to have it in there? And that's what I felt like some of the stuff was for. Was he had so much going on and he didn't know how to explain it, so we had a lot of filler content with that shock and awe to try to keep driving us as an audience to be engaged with the film. And it's like that works for so long, and at some point it's like, what are we doing? And I think probably by the time that we get to when he starts beating the shit out of himself.
Right.
And he's like, oh man, this has gone way too far. I'm like, at that point, I was like, I don't know what he's even trying to get across. I don't know if that's like, if it's supposed to be cathartic or if it's like self-mutilation or what that we're driving towards that he's feeling as a person. And then it's like the whole third act I felt was like him, kind of coming to terms with his devils.
So there's one more thing that is in terms of a theme that I don't think we've really touched on yet, that I did think about while watching this movie, which I'm kind of surprised we didn't bring it up yet because it was one of the more like clear ones to me, but peer pressure.
Oh.
Like it's one of those things where you think about it and it does kind of make a little bit more sense when you think about it from that perspective, because here's a character who, for all intents and purposes, is a failed writer, right? Because he's written a book, but not many people have read it. And he's solely kind of living off of the wealth of his wife or girlfriend. I forget if they're married or not.
They're married. It's his wife, and her father-in-law is the one that published the book.
Right. So like he ostensibly doesn't even really try in terms of like creating art or making money or like making a name for himself.
Right.
So then he's just kind of coasting, and then he meets Mia Goth's character, who gives him this praise, kind of elevates him, brings him into her twisted little group, and they go around, they do all these things, and they're like telling him to do all these things, and it's almost like he's doing them solely to impress them or solely to get on their good graces, not necessarily because he like wants to or because he even feels forced. More than likely, to me, it seemed like he was doing it to fit in and to like, because it feels like he finally found somewhere where he belongs.
Yeah.
He found somewhere where like he has a purpose and has something to do other than just sit around and like, have a lackluster vacation with his wife.
There's something to be said, I think a little bit more of a lost identity.
Right.
Or kind of, is this the person that I really am, or is this what I've always been set out to do? Mm-hmm. And I think that some of the, watching themselves get killed over and over again really drives them more into the madness of themselves. I mean, I guess you could say into the ego.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's part of that sort of alluring thing where it's not only that, but it's like the orgies and the drugs and everything going on. It's like, oh, okay, this is a lifestyle that is alluring because I've never really had this before. And these are people I've never really got to share this with.
Yeah, I mean, putting pleasure to the ultimate gain.
Yeah. And then, essentially they also just turn on him at the snap of a finger.
It's so hard to, did they though? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like,
kinda, because like they want him to like beat up the version of himself, and then when they reveal that it's him, he runs away. He becomes terrified, but they keep wanting to like egg him on. They're like, "Oh, come!" It's like if they're kids at a playground and they're wanting little Jimmy to like, I don't know, step on a duck or something.
Yeah.
And little Jimmy doesn't want to step on the duck because he likes ducks, but then his friends are like, "Oh, you don't want you're not going to be our friend if you don't step on the duck," because Jimmy doesn't want to step on the duck, but he also doesn't want to lose his friends. It's like.
But
I was kind of getting some of those vibes from it.
A little. I'm not cutting you off. I did too. But then the end, like the last scene at the farm, like completely was like, where did this just go?
Right.
You know, that's what I'm saying. Like there is that sense that does happen in there, and then next thing you know, she's feeding him through her tit, and it's like everyone's like, "Good job."
Oh, and that's where like some of the messiness comes in, right? Like there's some through line to like certain things going on in this movie, but it either doesn't really go anywhere, or it does get somewhere and it makes you think about some things, but then it just kind of like takes a left turn.
Yeah,
it's like, okay, now we're just doing this for the sake of being provocative, for the sake of like retaining the Cronenberg title of it being a weird body horror film.
Yeah.
And then you get to the end of it, and I did kind of enjoy the idea of this, maybe not necessarily the execution, where James is like processing the traumatic events that had happened the day before, and they're all just talking about the most mundane shit on the bus ride back. And he's kind of like almost the surrogate for us as an audience, where we're like, well, what the fuck? Why is nobody talking about all the wacky shit that's happened in this movie? Like, how come nobody's acknowledged this? And that's sort of what James is doing in the movie.
Yeah, I agree with that. I guess I just had a hard time with. Yeah.
No, I fully agree. This is a messy film, and it's got some issues, and the biggest thing going against it is it doesn't really feel like it's specific enough in trying to convey what it's getting across.
That's what I ultimately that's what I come down to with this thing. I do think there are points as the character we're watching them, you can develop a sense of sympathy or empathy or understanding, but because of all the actions that happened before, every time something new happens, it makes you wonder, who are we really watching? And not only that, but how much are they actually able to process? And because it's surreal, and that some of the thoughts or actions that are occurring aren't really happening, it's almost like a lucid dream that you're experiencing. And then so like when you get to the end with him sitting there, I mean, it's him processing. I mean, he gets home, and then the thing ends with him still in Lotiki.
I don't. Yeah,
I
can look it up real quick. I'm probably gonna butcher the pronunciation of it, but
it's L-I, and then I think it's T-A.
Litolka. Litolqa.
Yeah, Litolka. Which I didn't know if he did the things with the Q's not having the U's after him for a certain reason or not.
Probably being a silly boy.
I think so, because he had that. Every
he
Q,
seems like a silly guy.
Every Q just went right to an A, and it didn't have the UA, and I was like, well, is that how you really pronounce it?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Because it's missing you.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
All right, just like...
We're getting to the mind of Cronenberg.
Finally, we're diving in. Fuck the body horror stuff. Yeah. Let's get into his spelling.
We want the mind horror.
But, yeah, and that's where you kind of get to with his state of mind, and ultimately it's, did I ever really leave the island, but that's where I kind of have like, what do we get to? He had peer pressure going on. He does end up killing himself. He does it by his own hands, and next thing you know, everyone's cool with him, and they're back on the bus.
Yeah, you're friends with us again.
Yeah,
congratulations.
And it's
you
like,
did the thing.
I don't know. I mean, did he succumb to the peer pressure? Did he accept them? Is he just like reflecting on everything that just happened, wondering who the hell am I?
Well, it's one of those things where like, yeah, he succumbed to the peer pressure to like join their ranks, I guess, but he had to like literally sacrifice himself in order to do it.
Yeah, but like I'm saying, like, all right, there are movies where someone forces you to do something you didn't want to do, right? Like the Lost Boys, okay? You're forced to do something you didn't want to do. You then realize ultimately that the people forcing you to do these things are of pure evil. He doesn't kill himself and then look around and like yell at them and take like
he's not like, yay, I get to be a part of you again. Like
and he also doesn't do fuck you guys, I didn't want to do this is bullshit, you know. It's also like he just ultimately succumbs to his own self and is like, come here, mom. Like,
well, it's almost like he kind of reverts back to who he was at the beginning of the film, where he's just like kind of going with the flow of like not really going one way or the other. He's
so
just
is it
sort of
character growth, like
character roller coaster. It just goes back to the start.
Time's a flat circle.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. If we're gonna get surreal with it, so I don't know. Maybe that's what they were going for. Maybe that's the ultimate message. Is like, I don't know. You have to ask it because this movie is very non-specific with what it's trying to say.
Exactly, and I think it's like that for a reason. I don't know.
Because sometimes you come across a movie, and it feels like the surrealist elements have a point. They have some sort of line between them where there's a believability and you can get behind the surreal nature of it. Like I'm Thinking of Ending Things or Beau is Afraid.
Yes.
You know, two surreal movies that I really love that kind of have that great balance of like, okay, I know it's surreal, but there's still tension. There's still purpose. There's still a through line that it's getting towards.
That's what I was about to say. There's a purpose and direction with what's going on.
Yeah, because if you make a movie that's surreal for the sake of being surreal, you can almost, as a director, just say, oh, yeah, I definitely intended it for you to interpret it this way.
Yes.
And then someone else could have a totally different take on it, and he'd be like, oh, yeah, that's right, too. Like, it's sort of almost...
It's a cop-out.
It takes the responsibility off the director to say, yes, I had a specific vision.
With the two movies, Beau is Afraid and I'm Thinking of Ending Things, there is a through line, but also there's a line that you can walk on as an audience member, and even through reflection after you see the film, like I'm Thinking of Ending Things I had to do, you can still walk down that line and pull in everything that's happening. Like, it's not to say it's linear with what we're going on, but it's at least there aren't points where we're drifting back and forth and side to side, and it's just like, oh, I did this awful thing, but now I'm good, but now I'm going to be bad again, and then, you know, just to say, but we are still living in the moment, or these moments that we're going through. This one never felt like that. You never really... With me, with Skarsgård, I never really felt like, all right, I never knew what his state of mind was. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, the problem with it is that there's no, am I discovering myself? Is this ultimately how life's supposed to be? Am I living up to my father's expectations? And we have to use it through, through Cronenberg, doing it through the character. And I think there's all these little bits and pieces of things that he wanted to say or do that ultimately just went nowhere. And I mean, I agree with you too. I mean, in the sense that with a surreal movie, if you do it that way, you can put it in a sense that there is no direction, but because it's surreal, you can pull or interpret any way that you'd like to with the art that is being perceived, right? Mm-hmm. There's no knock in that. I just think that it's, with films, you have to have a little bit more. I mean, they're called directors for a friggin' reason, Yeah.
Consistency, I think, is a big...
Yes.
Thing that this movie does not have.
Yes.
Let's talk about some of the more technical parts and some of the base elements of this movie.
Love them.
Yes, this movie shot very well.
Oh my god,
I love the music.
Scene is fantastic.
I love the way the camera just kept tilting
through the drum roll, right?
Through the drum roll and like through the different settings of the resort going on.
Yes, edited flawlessly.
It like has a really good sense of like drawing you into the uneasiness of everything happening.
You kind of know that you're getting into something that you're just not going to be sure about, right? Like, didn't you get that sense right when it starts kind of? I mean, it's like almost doing like a 360 just circle around every time, and you're just kind of going on like this little kaleidoscope adventure, and it's like, all right, we're drifting into a foreign land here.
Yeah. It's unsettling. It's like kind of a good juxtaposition of like what we're seeing on screen versus like the editing taking place.
The
and, like,
beautiful
the music accompanying it.
Croatia, yes.
Right, yeah.
That's where they filmed it at.
Oh, okay. But... I really like the technical stuff going on. I think that like he just has an eye for visual storytelling. I'm curious what Possessor's like. I haven't seen that one. I think, is that the only other one he did, or did he do another?
I think Possessed was his first major film debut, and I am interested in that. I just don't know if it's got the same sort of like, we just don't know what we're doing. I don't know if I could stand it.
Right. I wouldn't blame you at all. But yeah, that was great. I
The
think
music in this thing's fantastic. I mean, a lot
music's
of
awesome.
not to say the sound design, but like the music that gets thrust in and being able to change between some of the I don't remember, some of like was it like a piano maybe, but like the strings, and then they get into like the disco, and then they get back to the strings, and then there's like the key, the piano notes being played. Like
it's a lot of like different sorts of music being able to like cohesively interweave in and out between each other.
I actually pulled up the soundtrack for this thing, and I think there's only like 3 or 4 songs in this maybe, and I was like, I don't know why I'm looking up the music for this, but I enjoyed it that much.
It's a vibe.
Oh,
at least that's one thing that this movie has going for it. It's a vibe.
100%. This is a film I think that you could not that you would, but like if you had a bunch of people over and you're just gonna like party or whatever, you could throw this thing on and be like, it's just gonna get weird, and it would definitely fit the attitude of what's going on. I don't think anything would like necessarily stick out so much that would be off-putting.
Yeah.
Probably certain moments if you looked at the camera, like what's going on the screen now, and it's like, oh.
One thing I want to bring up about our boy Skarsgård.
Yeah.
I really like him in this movie. I think his acting's really great. I kind of have a hard time believing that he's a schluppy loser writer when he is built like a Scandinavian god.
My Northman.
It's like if you take like Jeffrey Wright from American Fiction and you put him in this movie, it might be a little bit more believable, because like someone who's not physically imposing might be a little more susceptible to manipulation. He's literally like 6'3" and like built like a fucking brick house.
Yeah, but I mean, like you can definitely get behind it, because he's got his wife with him, and you find out that he really hasn't done much, and he married in rich. And I think it makes it a little bit more believable that he could have like some sort of timidness around him, because of it wasn't like he sought her out and was like, if anything, he might have been trying to con her into, or no, actually, she even says, my dad said, don't marry a writer, so I married a broke writer, like, so I think she found him. So I mean, a lot of like kind of the leading up to who he is made sense to me. I mean, I know what you're saying.
I think he embodies the character well enough. It's just physically sometimes I think about how stacked this dude is, and maybe I'd have to picture like some other kind of physique for his character.
We do talk about it. It's like the Tobey Maguire thing, right? Like
a little bit.
You want it. You can't throw an A-lister in there because you're gonna get lost with like. Dude, there's no way. Like he does embody some of that. Like if you would have got maybe a little bit more of a no name or someone that's just Jesse Plemons.
I'm trying to picture a version of this movie where Dane DeHaan plays James, and I'm wondering like how that would go.
Dane DeHaan. Why can't I?
Oh shit. What's a
wow?
Cure for Wellness.
Sure.
Green Goblin and Amazing Spider-Man 2.
You got it. That guy.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I'm going with Plemons. I think Plemons would have been. Plemons is like
that would have been interesting. I would like to see that.
Because he's got no physicality around him.
Not that we've seen necessarily, but I'm trying to get the levels.
To Kirsten Dunst.
Trying to get the levels good, because for some reason my audio's getting quiet.
Uh-oh.
There we go.
That's a good pop.
Yeah, I got to get
pop
this
the
shit
peas.
Popped out, so sometimes it can read me. No, and also I want to say this too. His lack of facial hair and the way he spoke in this movie reminded me so much of his dad. So much of Stellan Skarsgård.
Really?
I think so. Like if you watch Melancholia and then watch scenes from this movie, and you'll understand there's like this cadence that they both share that I think is so similar between each other. It's like he reminds me so much of his dad in this movie.
Yeah, I can't see it, but I'm not disagreeing with you.
Okay. And then Mia Goth, what do we think of her? Because I'm struggling with the idea of like her accent choice as a way of being like unsettling and kind of creepy, or if it's just a poor British accent that she's doing.
Well, so she does lead in with, I'm the failed actress. I fail at everything. And I think
which never comes back up again, I don't think.
It
right?
doesn't, but it does help with her character with kind of like, oh, that's why you talk like this. That's why you kind of do some of these silly things that you're doing. Like to me, it really helped out with like okay, she's obviously not going to be good at what she does. You know, she makes enough money in commercials because she can do something really bad and she can be playful around it. It shows that she's got charisma. I thought oh, look at this knife. I can't cut my bread. How does this knife work? I thought that was a really funny scene. I was like, that's really well done, but it also says like, all right, she's never going to be the Natalie Portman of that world. You know, so like, you know, I was fine with that. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Some of the things I read, I mean, people say that she overacted in this. I guess I can see it a little bit.
I think her acting was fine. I think that she embodied the character well enough. It's kind of like a similar thing with Skarsgård, where it's like I have a hard time separating the accent from it sometimes.
Yeah.
But as far as like acting in itself goes, I think she did a good job.
I thought they both were exceptionally well.
And if you're going to get somebody to play like a creepy female lead, what better way to go than Mia Goth in this day and age?
Oh my god,
this is like quintessential Mia Goth role right here.
She's turning into what's her nuts from freaking Fuqua. Oh man, I'm not gonna be able to get her name. She was in The Craft. She was in The Waterboy. She got in a really
oh shit! I know who you're talking about.
It might even be a Mia.
Faruja Bulk.
Yeah,
is that who you're talking?
Yeah. Remember when she was kind of
got a
like,
very distinct look, kind of unsettling.
Yeah, she got into like the early goth stage and like was like the model for it.
Yeah, she was in American History X as like his neo-Nazi girlfriend.
Yeah, she took all the really damaging roles and like knocked it out of the ballpark because she had that look.
Yeah,
but that's like what Mia Goth's like gonna do now is like any sort of horror movie that's got a female lead that has to be like the villain. That's her.
Yeah, she's like very pretty and you know, very like just conventionally attractive, but also like her lack of eyebrows just gives her that really creepy vibe too.
Yeah, well, it's hard to get her facial like what's she really thinking.
And then she's also able to do this thing with her voice that I really like, where it's kind of like really purposefully shaky and unsettling, and it gets under your skin and is very high pitched.
Oh man, when she was on the car. Oh no, my wine! We have to stop, Jamesy. Yeah,
perfect.
Yes,
well cast.
I enjoyed her. I was actually very happy to see that she was in it. I didn't realize that she was in this film. I knew it was Skarsgård, and I thought it was Skarsgård and his wife going through like just gonna be torture porn for 2 hours, and then all of a sudden for me it took a left turn pretty quick when they just buy their way out of it.
Yeah, I mean he should have taken a left turn when he hit that guy, but you know.
God, well, you're such an idiot. We didn't even need to stage it. It's fucking.
Yeah.
Oh man.
When they're like just negging him the entire time as he's walking in front of the car.
So bad. And it's just like
feels bad, man.
Well, and the funny thing too, the title of his book was The Veiled Sheath. And I thought that had like a little bit of some introspection or some retrospection on him as a character. You know? I thought that was a clever title to have for the book in terms of the failed writer and what's going on.
That's funny because I thought she said the veiled sheep.
Oh, so really?
I was thinking of it from like a submissive angle.
Oh.
Like he's just kind of a sheep going along in life.
Yeah, what's that? Simp boy.
Simp boy, yeah.
No, I had the subtitles on.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So it's what it was called. So everyone
it's
out
funny
there.
because I started playing it with subtitles, and then the subtitles would be like 5 seconds behind what they're actually saying.
Really?
So I was like, I can't do this.
I don't know what's going on with subtitles nowadays because, like, when I was watching The Holdovers...
That's quite the sentence. What's going on with subtitles nowadays?
Old man Mac.
Mac's got a hot take.
Yeah, here we go. Platitude.
Subtitles catching strays in this conversation.
No, I went to watch The Holdovers. I couldn't get the subtitles on for that, so I had to turn it up. And then for Anatomy of a Fall, I couldn't get it on. I had to turn it off my TV and then turn it back onto Hulu. And then this one, it popped right up just fine. Like I'm like, what?
That's weird.
What's going on with the subtitle game?
That's like my issue with Godfather, the first one.
Yeah.
Where I had the subtitles set just by default, and then they would speak Italian. The subtitles would go away, so I'd have to turn the subtitles off to get the Italian subtitles. And then the scene where Michael's in the diner happens, and they're speaking Italian, and you're not meant to get subtitles. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, it's maddening, right?
I'm like, this is my first time watching this movie, and I'm frightened.
They need to really work on this subtitle problem.
Yeah. Hashtag subtitle.
Yeah, you guys listen to this, please. We need to start. We need to start this platform.
Hashtag not so subtle subtitle.
Oh, kind of wordy.
Kind of wordy.
Kind of wordy.
It's enough to get the word out there.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Well, they'll know what we're saying when we're on the steps of the Capitol building.
Yeah. Oh no. We got another year before we can do that again. Just kidding. Just kidding. I want to make that clear. We do not support January 6th at all.
There it is. We just edit all of this out.
I might. Joke's gone too far? No, but I'm glad that you had subtitles so you could distinguish that book title because I thought it was sheep.
Yeah, so. No, and either way, I think we both were like, oh, wow, that's appropriate.
Yeah.
Like, this fits with what's going on.
Even if mine was misguided.
Hey, you were close.
That's something. Was there anything else we want to talk about with Infinity Pool? I don't think I have anything else. I've gone through all my notes.
I think the only thing that I was hoping that they were going to go more down the road of was a little bit more of the mystery on how do we really know if it's us still after the cloning. Mm-hmm. How do you know that it's not the clone that made it out and you're the clone versus kind of, that they killed you. I really wish they would have touched on that or kept going down that route a little bit more.
Right, because the way they set it up in a movie, it's definitely a thing you should pay attention to.
Yes.
But by the end of the film, it's not something you really think about as something you should care in viewing this film to its completion.
That's the problem that I had with it. What's funny is like you see the whole process going on, and I'm like, oh, I wonder if they're gonna get into like free will or like how do you know or like what's the difference, and no, they just touched on it, and every once in a while I think they would bring up that question again. I want to say Charles asked or the doctor asked, at like 30 minutes past that point. And it's like, the fuck do I even care? But no, I mean, outside of that, I mean, I think this movie's kind of a face value movie.
Yeah.
You could take it for what it is. I think it definitely has a vibe. And if you're down for a vibe and watching a movie with a vibe, you can at least watch some of this. I don't know. I think it loses. It lost me towards the end. Like I started yawning and I was like clock watching.
Yeah, you check the runtime. When is this gonna wrap up?
Yeah.
Let's get into ratings.
Okay.
This is a 7 out of 10.
Wow.
For me.
Okay.
It is very technically enjoyable. I love the vibe of it. The music's great. The cinematography is awesome. I think Brandon Cronenberg has an eye for the camera.
Yeah.
Acting's really good. Really, it's just kind of like a lot of the more through line elements of this film.
The writing.
The writing, but also because I think the dialogue for the most part works. It's mostly just like where the story goes and like what's trying to touch on and comment on and all these different themes that it wants to lay out in front of you, but it never really delves quite deep enough into any specific one of them.
Yeah.
And it really does kind of hold the movie back from being pretty great. But other than that, pretty solid. I mean, if you like a Cronenberg flick, you're probably going to like this. And that's pretty much my final thoughts on that.
Nice. I had this after initial viewing, I was like, man, 6 out of 10. It's messy, but after, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes, bumped it up to a 7. This thing's got, technically speaking, it's fantastic. The cinematography is awesome. I'm always a guy that, like, when I talk about films, there's a couple criteria that you have to meet, but, like, the production and the camera work and the sound fit in. So, I mean, like, if you have a good film on that front alone, you're probably going to be a 5 out of 10. Like, I don't know if I dip lower than a 5 if it looks great and it's just, like, shit acting, horrible writing. Acting's really good in this. I mean, they bring up some questions that at the time kind of make you think, but they never go back to and they never really linger on having you have to think about it, you know? And I think that the reason why I gave it a 7 out of 10 is because this thing just goes nowhere. And then this is a 2-hour film that I'm pretty sure could be reduced down to about 95 minutes and have about the same value.
Yeah, just take out some of those ancillary elements that really don't lead to much else.
Yes. But you said a good thing. I mean, Cronenberg, hey, worst case, like directing doesn't work out. This guy's got an eye for camera. I mean, well, I think he had he was working with the cinematographer, obviously, but I got to imagine that some of his, like, this is what I want, make it happen. He's got an eye for that. I just don't know if writing's his thing. He might be another Nicholas Winding Refn.
Could be. And I mean, it's clear to me that he definitely has things that he wants to say, but it doesn't really feel like he knows how to communicate it 100% effectively.
Yeah, he's got Asperger's.
Oh, no.
No, we're just
Does
kidding.
he actually? Oh.
Brandon, if you're listening, we love you.
Oh, he's probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah.
But honestly, I mean, I'd be curious as to what else he makes. In the future.
I mean, we both talked about it. We're kind of intrigued by Possessor.
Yeah, I'm gonna check that out.
I listened to another podcast I know that talked about it, and I didn't realize it was Cronenberg. And I was like, I gotta see what else he's done, because I think And I go Possessor. I was like, you know what? Maybe sometime I will check that out. I don't know. I mean, it's the shock and awe value. I could care. Like I said, I think we both can say we care less about that than actually the technical aspects, how well the story's written, and the acting. Mm-hmm. I mean, some of the shit that happens doesn't need to happen. So if Possessor's like that, I'll probably put him on I will check that out if it's ever free video list.
For sure. Well, speaking of Cronenberg, we got a discussion of A History of Violence from Daddy Cronenberg.
Yeah.
Mr. David Cronenberg himself. And this is a film I recommended. Obviously, directed by Daddy Cronenberg himself, written by Josh Olson, based on a history of violence graphic novel by John Wagner and Vince Locke, and it stars Viggo Mortensen as Tom Stahl, who is married to Maria Bello and has a son and a daughter, Jack and I don't remember, Judy, I think? Jack and Judy.
The daughter, Sarah, maybe.
Oh, it might be Sarah.
Yeah, she doesn't do anything.
Yeah. But anyway, he has a nice family, lives in a small town, runs a diner, and something happens to where he is labeled as a hero because he saved some people from some nefarious figures. And because he was on TV for his heroic acts, some demons of his past come back to haunt him. And that's pretty much it without getting into spoilers of this film. So spoilers for A History of Violence. So let's get into it. This is a movie that I had been intrigued by even before watching or knowing really anything about David Cronenberg, because I knew that David Cronenberg was more of like a body horror director. You think of him, you think of like Crash or The Fly or Videodrome, something that is more commonly known within his wheelhouse of like, oh, it's body horror.
Yeah.
And then you come across a movie like The History of Violence, or A History of Violence, and it's intriguing because from the outset it doesn't really seem like a movie that would have that necessarily involved in it. And
well, if you exclude the title.
Right, exactly. So you kind of get suspicious and you think like, what's this about? What's this angle here? And then you check it out and it's like, oh, okay. It's a pretty solid, straightforward action thriller film that's got some things going on in terms of really great prosthetic work, some really interesting characters, and a performance that I think is really kind of captivating with Viggo, because he has to play both sort of like a family man but also someone who's a ruthless killer. And so it's one of those things where like, yeah, there's some things about it that I don't really care for, but I think at the end of the day, for me personally, for the most part, it does kind of work as like a sort of, action thriller film that's pretty straightforward. Doesn't have that much going on in terms of like theme or messages or anything else, but it is kind of what it is. It's like a history of violence. It's this guy who is dealing with the demons of his past, and they come back to haunt him. And the sort of like life that he's built for himself is in jeopardy.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm curious your experience because you'd seen this before, right?
I'd seen it once. Saw it when it first came out. It was actually funny because I was at a buddy's house and we were gonna sneak out. So
how old were you?
15.
Okay.
15 or 6. Something like, high school shenanigans, some tomfoolery. And we put this movie on because we had to stay up until, my buddy's dad passed out so we could sneak out and go hang out with our other friends. And we threw this movie on, and I just remember being like, oh, okay. Like, I saw that. So I was really interested to see how I'd take it down this next time because I'd only seen it once, and I saw it at a very young age. And, it's a movie that I think it's brought up. Well, maybe not, but it's always on the precipice of my mind for some reason. Like, I think a lot of time if you say Viggo Mortensen, like I immediately equate, like, it's like this, Hidalgo, and Lord of the Rings, like, is where I go.
Yeah.
So, I was very curious to see how I would receive it this next time around, and we'll talk about it, and the first thing that popped out, Scott McCady, I think is his name. Remember Pontypool?
Yes.
He's
the guy in the jacket, right? In the beginning.
And he's got that deep voice, and he goes, the maid really pissed me off. I'm going to, I talked to her. Or I can't even do his accent, but I was like, oh, dude. And then I thought Jason Clarke was the other guy.
Oh, I could see that, yeah.
From Everest. And I'm like, oh, my God.
Well, it's funny because this movie opens up, and I thought that he was going to be... I thought it was going to be like a flashback where he's supposed to be like a young Vito.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay, so this is young Vito. And then the scene plays out. It's like, oh, this is not young Vito.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. But yes,
continue. Vito or Vigo?
Vigo? Oh, Vito.
I think you were talking about Vito Corleone.
I'm going to switch it up, and it's going to be an accident, and we might as well just drive right past it because there's no stopping it from happening.
You're saying I was like thinking of Vito Corleone. Corleone.
Yeah, right. His Italian accent from Green Book.
So you thought it was gonna be so like it's him, and then it's not.
Well, I mean that was just like a quick thought. Yeah, like kind of just.
No, I get where you hadn't seen it before, so that was totally like, oh, we're gonna see a little bit of a flashback. Mm-hmm. I mean, and that actually probably helped you out with like, oh, well, what is he doing? Like once they get to him, he's like, hey, hon. Car won't start up. Could you take me to the diner? Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Very soft-spoken, meek, like...
Well, it's framing this guy as, like, being a really wholesome, just normal, average Joe.
He does a great job, too, by the way.
He does a fantastic job. And I think that that's, like, one of the favorite parts of the movie for me is, like, him balancing sort of, like, that image of, oh, I've got, like, a really great life for myself. I'm very wholesome. I'm a family man. And then, like, later in the movie when it comes time to, like... slowly reveal those aspects of Joey Cusack. It's like, oh, now we get to see like menacing Vigo.
Kind of, to some extent. I thought we were gonna get more of like back in my Philly grind, I'm gonna show you crazy. He never really. He's not Willem Dafoe and from Green Goblin.
No, he's not like an evil dude necessarily.
Well, he was. That's my.
Well, he was, but like he's very clearly trying to get out of that life, and every time
bring some of it back. Besides just him killing people, because
I mean, I kind of get it though. I kind of get what the movie's going for in that way and this is something that I thought about after watching the film, is that to me it kind of almost feels like Brawl in Cell Block 99 in a way.
Yeah,
where it's like no matter what this guy does, no matter how hard he tries to fight against it, he just keeps getting pulled further and further back into the shit. And I really like that aspect because it makes it more believable that like the way he fights against it, he keeps going back further into it and he's more resistant to it. The fact that he doesn't want to be going back into this life and the fact that he doesn't want to return to Joey Cusack tells us a lot about like him as a character. Not only does he want to retain what the life he has, but he also just wants to get out of the life he had before.
See, that's what I'm saying. It's been 20 years removed. It's like he did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he worked hard to achieve that life for himself, and then all of a sudden something happens, and it's like pretty nearly taken away from him.
I mean, you could make the argument it did. We don't really know. The ending's kind of ominous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I really liked him as Tom Stahl. I love that.
I gotcha.
I just wanted a little bit more of like the Joey to pop out.
I think there's because this movie's pretty short. It's 96 minutes, I think.
Yep.
So probably like without credits, probably like a rounded 90. This movie, I think, I agree. It definitely could have used more in the way of showing us that side of him. I don't mind that it didn't, but I agree with you. I think the movie definitely could have maybe benefited from showing a little bit more of that.
I think it would have helped out.
Well, having us spend a little more time with Vigo in that later half of the movie, where like, okay, now he's removed from his family.
Yes,
we get to see, and I get that. I get where you're coming from in that angle.
I don't need a whole lot. I don't need him to go down memory lane with the brother. Like if they get to the bar and he's talking to the guy, and the guy says, "Hey, finish your beer, and then I'll go take you and see him." You know. If he just popped out and was like, "No, you're going to take me now, you son of a bitch." Like, hit him with like a Philly accent or something like that. And it's like, oh, okay, like he's still there. Like, I think a lot of how we're supposed to interpret it is like I got the mind of this, but the body of that. Mm-hmm. And that's where I morph him a little bit more. More. We got to see Tom Stahl, and we got to see meek and timid Tom Stahl. Mm-hmm. Like Joey gets brought around, we get to see Tom Stahl operating Joey's body. It's like, give me a little bit of that Joey popping out. That would have helped out with some of the staleness. This film is like, it's got a lot of staleness.
I don't disagree with you. That's a lot of where like my issues lie with this movie.
Yes,
it's like because it is like a very kind of straightforward action thriller film. It doesn't really have that much of style, I guess.
No, it doesn't. Zero style whatsoever. And I don't know, like, hey, we're playing into the Midwest, but like,
right?
You know what I'm saying?
Well, now it does not help that, and this is one thing that I really dislike about the movie is a lot of the music, especially towards the beginning.
Oh God,
it's like
Field of Dreams.
Well, it's like, what am I watching? Am I watching like the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan where they're at the cemetery?
Yeah.
Like, what are these like weird military horns going off in the soundtrack of this thing? Like,
yes.
It's like maybe. I don't want to say it's like a product of the time, but it does feel like that sort of like early 2000s thing where like, to show that everything's great and that everything is in order and how it should be in this American lifestyle, let's have this patriotic music blaring that you hear at like a military funeral.
That's what like 1,000%. The soundtrack in this thing does no justice to keep you engaged whatsoever.
It's almost the inverse of Infinity Pool.
Oh,
where it's like the music in that is fire and very appropriate for the type of tone that it's trying to set. And then this one, it's like, okay, I get it. You're trying to show like the American dream essentially, but do we really need this type of music in order to convey that?
We're gonna show him just walking down the street. This is what they do in the Midwest. Just walk down the street to his diner, and we're going to play some trumpets behind it, and you're going to feel very patriotic, and cornfields and apple pie, and it's the summertime, and like, dude, like, okay. I think what he was really relying on was the suspense and the mystery that's involved with Ed Harris. Now, Ed Harris... pretty good job, I think.
He was fucking scary in this movie.
Well,
he made me piss my shorts. Let me tell you.
I wasn't that afraid of him, but he definitely had the charisma that made me almost root for him in this film.
Well, like the way that they have him with the eye and the way they dress him up and just his cadence throughout the film. It's almost like he should have played the big bad guy at the end of this film. And that
I like John Hurt.
William Hurt?
Or is it William Hurt?
I think it's William Hurt. But no, he does a great job too. I really like him, especially the way he's playing that character. He's got like the fucking chin strap of the gods. But it is interesting in terms of structure how they have Ed Harris, who is supposed to be like the most menacing motherfucker in the film, die halfway through. And, it's one of those things where like, kind of like Brawl in Cell Block 99 sort of does this where like it's the progression of like
careful with
I won't spoil it, but it's like the progression of things just getting worse and worse. And that could have been like a nice representation with the way that Ed Harris looks in this film. It's like, oh, he's basically Satan in this. Like he's the big bad guy. He's the one that they really have to be scared of, both physically and in terms of like the power he has over like the mob that he controls. You know? Like just by sheer influence and sheer cadence of his character that he's playing. It's like this guy is really scary. And then you get to William Hurt, it's like, he's kind of a scary dude, but he's also his brother. He's kind of goofy.
Yeah.
You know, he's like cracking jokes and all this shit. Like,
there's got to be some charisma around him, right? Like, they got to have a little bit of fun. He's tasked to do a job he doesn't necessarily want to do.
Right. Yeah.
You know? And, yeah, I think this thing could have used a little bit more Ed Harris.
I think so, too.
Yeah, this thing was not gonna lie, it was 90 minutes and it felt like it was an hour and 20.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's there are a couple times where it made me chuckle. There are a couple times when Joey does pop out, I think, at least, with just some of his quips. One of them that I had, two of them down, but one that really comes to mind.
Was it I should have killed you in Philly?
No.
Okay, because that's the first time in the movie he kind of like shows his hand. It's like, okay,
at that time,
I'm really Joey Cusack.
That when he says that, no, they're at the diner, and Ed Harris is saying like, "Oh, your coffee's so great," and it's like, well, blah 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 blah, and he goes, "Well, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave. As you can see, we're pretty busy." And Ed Harris looks in because he's got the eye, and he's like, he's got that. Like something that Tom Stahl wouldn't say, like a tongue-in-cheek, like, here's a jab for you, mother, like, I know who you are. And then there was another time, I think, with the gun, or maybe talking to the cop, he had another, like, one of those cheeky comments where it's like, Tom Stahl ain't saying that, like someone that's kind of like a badass would kind of give you that like little quip to kind of set someone off. So like you get those moments where he kind of punctures through, and then then we know he's Joey, and then he's still like, I'm Tom Stahl. It's like, all right, I know what you've gone this far in your life up to this point. And one of the things I got really annoyed with that they could have did just like his fucking son did. What is it like to be with this man that you don't know? Like me, Jasmine was watching with me, and I looked at her. I was like, "What if you found out I worked for the mob for 20 years and like we were married? Like, would you view me as a stranger in that house?" She's like, "No, but I would kind of question as to who you are." Like, so we're 95% stranger, 5% you know me.
Yeah,
you know
right.
what I'm saying? Like, you're not quite unfamiliar, but just enough that it'd be uncomfortable.
Yeah,
and they don't touch on it at all. And I got really annoyed with that. Like, they had such a nice premise.
They touch on it a little bit, but it's mostly through like his interactions with Maria Bello throughout the film.
And the son.
And the son a little bit, but it's mostly through her and like her kind of like reaction when he like confirms her suspicions and everything.
Think about it this way though, right? 90-minute film. So we just got the one reaction in the hospital, right?
In the hospital, yeah.
Yep. Police guy shows up. She defends him.
Yeah, she like kind of saves his ass in that moment.
Then they go and they bang on the so 15,
well, she like goes and storms off in a huff, and he tries to stop her, and then that's when sexy stare time happens. Which, by the way,
15-year-old,
that's got to be the most uncomfortable encounter of all time.
Like,
I was just thinking of like the bruises that they'd have. Just like
no, she did. If you
yeah.
Which another thing too. Gratuitous naked scene, like she just walks out full bush and everything, and I was thinking like, all right, you didn't show anything during the sex, why do it now?
Right.
Like,
well, it's one of those,
so she's completely vulnerable, or just to show that
it's funny that you mentioned that, because if you remember the documentary that we talked about, this film is not yet rated.
Yeah.
Maria Bello was one of the actresses that was one of the talking heads discussing how the MPAA was censoring a movie that she was in where she was showing bush essentially.
Yeah.
And it really kind of like made me think back to that and recognize that like, okay, she's just comfortable being naked, and maybe she suggested doing it and was like, hey, let's just throw it in here. It kind of adds some like layers or something. I don't know.
We got to spice this thing up because it's getting dull quick. Like I thought the stairway sex scene would have did it, but people are still bored.
Right. But yes,
she did have bruises on her back though, because like the next scene's her at night sitting there,
and she's like just kind of sobbing and
yeah. If you looked at her shoulder and her back, it's all dinged up. Like that's because I had the same thought. I was like, man, they'd be all fucked up just boning on that thing. Yeah. And then she's got bruises back, and I was like, oh, that's not from Vigo.
Right. I don't disagree with you that scene where she just walks out and is just like unrobed or whatever, like open robe, is is gratuitous because it is.
Oh, dude, there's no. So what's funny too is like when you suggested it. If you listen to the last episode, I kind of hinted at something scandalous happening.
Mm-hmm.
I thought because I was like in my head, I'm like, I'm pretty sure you see her naked at some point, and I thought it was in that stairway scene, right? And then it doesn't happen, so I was like, oh, okay. Like I'm watching this.
No, they're very like covert about the stair scene, which it kind of gives it that sort of extra punch and purpose, and I kind of like the stair scene for it doing that because it shows the sort of push and pull of like her wanting to have like the normal life again, like, oh, if maybe I just impromptu do this thing, maybe we'll get some semblance of normalcy.
It's interesting, yeah.
But then it happens, and then she still realizes that she can't feel that way, at least not in that moment yet, so then she still storms off angry.
Well, so I'm curious because earlier in the film they do it. She dresses up as a cheerleader, so they do a little bit of role playing.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that was like she's kicking, like it knocks her socks off or whatever they say, you know.
Well, that I think to me told me that okay, they have like not just a healthy life like outside of their sex life, but within it too.
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that going now to the staircase scene. They are almost role playing. This is a complete stranger. It's almost in the same sense of what you get when they're in the bedroom, except it's not really. She throws on the cheerleading outfit and it's still Tom.
Yeah.
Now on the stairway scene, now she's actually living out a fantasy of you are a complete stranger. This is because I also thought that he raped her. From what I remember being 15, she like totally pulls him into the thing.
Oh yeah, and she's like they're both kind of like in control of the situation.
He goes to stop at one point, and she like grabbed his. Because I thought the whole time it was like Joey coming out and like completely animalistic savage, you know, and like I didn't realize, but yeah, he stops and then she pulls him back in, and then they're going at it. I'm like, oh, this kind of plays into that role playing fantasy world that they were in before. Maybe she is turned on by this, and then she does like you're saying though. She wants that, like, I just want it to be role playing. Like, I don't want it to be, oh, you really are a stranger now. You know? Like, before when she was a cheerleader, it's like, you're still my husband. You can be the high school quarterback. And now you get it, and now she's like, oh, you're a mobster, you know, and I'm just, I'm the you know, the damsel in distress.
I could see it both ways where like she's kind of getting off on the idea of like, oh, this is a dangerous thing, and it's kind of like turning me on.
Yeah, because it's pulling her out of that lifestyle that, I mean, yeah, I guess we're saying it like the same thing, but we're also thinking about it invertedly. Because I guess you're like, ultimately at the end of the day, not to go ahead.
Well, no, I was like, it could also be the other way where I initially thought of it as like her trying to take back some semblance of control over their lives and like maybe return to some sense of normalcy.
Yeah.
But then like it all finishes up and she realizes still that like it can't be that way.
That's what I'm saying. The outcome of all of it, either way you look at it, is she realizes that things have changed.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I don't think there's a wrong interpretation there between either of those.
Right. As long as, I definitely think that she gets to that point where it's, and so going back to my point, so now we've had two kind of like encounters, one in the hospital, now one where they've had sex. Now he's sleeping on the couch, and he goes, I gotta, you know, his brother calls and he leaves. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's the only time. And then the other conversations with his kid about, you know, and I was really like, oh man, you had such a, have him go a couple days in the town and have him kind of like question his own identity and have I really changed? Like that Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, like, can I really be someone different? Am I really someone different? I've done all these like horrific things and I know I've gone past it, but it's still in my DNA.
You're right.
And they just don't touch on it. It's just...
Maybe it's one of those things where for me personally it worked because I think they did a good enough job of kind of like building up the suspense that his family is going to find out who he really was. Like the scene where he like slaps his kid, or like some of the scenes where like she's kind of like questioning everything, or like I don't know. There's like kind of a build up to that, and there's like a good chunk of movie that's dedicated to just the tension of like, are they gonna find out of him being Joey Cusack? And I think that for me kind of like helped lead into those scenes a little bit more and like make them paced out a little bit better for me. So I don't know. I think that's just like a personal thing that.
Well, I mean, other people could see it that way. I'm not. I did not. I thought that. I'm like, this is 30. It's 35, 40 minutes of leading up. We get the 15 minutes of complete stranger, and then we get the penultimate round of him going to Philly, and then to see his brother. And it's like, boy, that 15 minutes I feel like could have been stretched out more and could have gave us a little bit more of the characters. Like, you know, it's not necessarily fish out of water, but you're taking, like, think of how weird that would be if you just found out someone's not who they are. And it's not like it was all of 4 years and she's like, these are my 2 kids, he's stepdad. Like, no, they've done all this stuff together, and it's just like a little, like, we don't know who you are anymore, and that's it. And he's just like, well, I got to end this. You know, I don't know.
I get that.
I was a little frustrated. I thought it was a great thing they could have touched on in the film.
No, I agree with you in that this film definitely could have benefited more from extra stuff happening, extra scenes included of like either expanding on certain things or like including more scenes of the same thing where it like really hammers home that point of like, oh, there's a disconnection here. It's really turned his life upside down. She doesn't know him anymore. Yeah, he's got to go fix things.
Yes.
Yeah. No. What do we think of the? Because there is some of that like David Cronenberg effects going into the movie.
Scott McCaddy
with the violence going on. Not that it was like jarring or anything really, because I mean I'm used to seeing all kinds of movies now, but it was something that I did take note and was like kind of the closest thing that this movie does have in terms of a style, in that like the violence is very consistently good. And it's very pulpy. It also just kind of reminds me of some of the S. Craig Zahler movies that way, where like someone gets hurt or like there's an act of violence happens, and you know, a history of violence that happens, and you feel like kind of the weight of it. With like the sound design and like the blood effects and everything going into like the prosthetics.
You have to. This movie is one of, I would say, is hurt a little bit by when it was made, because I was trying to think back. You have the 80s that was very like, you know, corn syrup and like claymation, and then the 90s Tarantino's about the only one that did it where it was violence for fun. You know, this one is actually violence with a purpose, and it makes it almost a little bit more intimate with what's going on.
Yes. And
because of the time, I don't think there's a whole lot of movies. Now, granted, Mr. fucking Encyclopedia of Movies will probably remind me, but from my memory, there's not a lot of movies that kind of take this aspect of violence and put it in like this really intimate sort of nature. And I think that's what it really holds to the title of the film. But at the same token, because we're 20 years removed of it, and I think there are more movies now like this.
Right, yeah.
And we are so desensitized that it makes it, of the time, perfect, I think. Like, it really gives you like a, oh, wow, aspect.
Yeah, like you really didn't think of violence this way before, because either the effects weren't good enough to the point where they were believable, or violence was used with a different goal of it being fun and exciting.
Yeah. Or, you know, like, think about it this way, too. About one of the only other films, actually, I don't want to name it because it's very... There's a couple films where you can probably think about something happening very tragically where 2 characters are fighting to the death. A lot of the time, the violence that you see is that there's 5, 6, 7 guys that are getting sprayed with bullets or maybe arms chopped off. It's never really just the one-on-one battle that you see. And especially in somewhere like that you go to eat food at, you know, it's usually like an arena or an alley or something. Like, this is just like in the house violence, in the diner violence, you know, and it makes it very, like I keep saying, intimate, but there's like a certain aspect to it to me that when it's just 1v1 in a very social setting, like you didn't really see that. It also, it opens up the door a little bit about where this could happen at. Because in movies, I think they don't, at least before that time, put it in a venue or an arena that it was like typical everyday life, you know, which is another with the history of violence going on, made it all that much more, I would say, more realistic, if you will.
Yeah.
Which I think at the time this film could hold on to. But like I said, you know, nowadays, I feel like you see so much more of it. We're so desensitized. It's kind of hard going back to that lens to watch it. But at the time, I got to imagine, like, this was a very intimate, or I keep saying intimate, but I'm trying to think of another word, of close nature that you watch this film and, you know, it strikes a little bit more of a chord.
Yeah.
Which I feel like is what the body horror guru got to.
Right. It resonates with you a little bit more. And like
Yeah.
you said, we're so saturated with movies now where like it kind of emulates that same sort of thing.
Yeah.
Something like Green Room or Blue Ruin or
Yes.
like any S. Craig Zoller movie that you watch and the violence is like one of the points that you get in the movie where like, oh shit, like this is what I'm supposed to be watching. This is like the point of the film right here.
Yeah.
And I can imagine back then watching that for the first time in 2005. It's like, oh shit, I've never really seen anything like this before.
Yes, at least I think so, and I could be way off, but I don't really remember a whole lot of rated R films that were coming out that portrayed it in such a close setting and a proximity that could hit close to home.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, a lot of it I feel like was in a, I mean, if you got to, it's like a bank robbery or something. You know, I'm trying to think of some other, like we talked about Craig Zoller, but anyways, I'm not going to be able to pull up any movie from my memory.
Yeah. The night is getting old and our memories are fading.
I've already talked about subtitles.
Right, exactly. I don't know if I really had much else to discuss with this movie specifically. I mean, I just have my notes. Oh, this is one thing I definitely wanted to bring up. The kid who got bent out of shape because his son caught the ball.
What the fuck was that dude's problem? Such a dumb, like, can't they do something like a little bit better than it's gym class and he caught a fly ball? It's not even like he made a great catch.
Yeah, they could have like written a scene where he's talking to the guy's girlfriend and like the girl's laughing and then he sees it and goes like, "You talking to my girlfriend? Hey, you little gay boy," or whatever.
Fucking baseball tryouts and have him like, all right, like, hey, you get a hit, you're on the team, you know, and then like boom, and then the kid that doesn't care about sports is like chasing it down and like dives for it or something. Like, it's literally like, oh, he ain't gonna catch that. Hey, you ain't gonna catch that. Caught. I'm gonna fuck that kid up.
Yeah, it's like this kid is my mortal enemy because he caught a ball that I threw right towards him.
The lowest stakes to get pissed off about.
I was like, okay, that's a little ridiculous.
That kid sucked, and I hate saying about it, but then he's got
Which one? Both of them?
Yeah, no, very true, Robbie.
Yeah, he was. I didn't want to say it, but he was giving like major Robbie vibes from this film. Even like the way he was dressed too. It's like, okay, did he just watch? Did he get like an early cut of War of the Worlds and said, "Yes, I want this kid to look exactly like him"?
Depressed. We live in a small town. I smoke dope vibe. Just a little bit.
Yeah.
He's a little bit ahead of the curve.
I'm smarter than everybody. Nobody understands me.
Yeah. But like I don't live in Jersey, so
right. This
I'm
is like
not listening to Green Day.
This is like this is the Midwest version of Robbie from War of the Worlds.
God, I thought, so it pops on. That kid pops on, and I'm like, oh, that's the dude from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I'm like, that's not Mac, not Charlie, but
Dennis.
Yeah.
Oh, you thought it was Glenn Howerton?
Young Dennis.
Okay.
So I've already now mistaken two actors in this movie, and I'm thinking like, oh, this could be like the greatest thing I've watched in a while.
That's funny because Always Sunny started in 2005. So.
Oh, I guess so then he would have been a way young Dennis. I wasn't even thinking about it.
Yeah.
But it's not him. So
No.
I thought it looked like him, and then I'm like, maybe this guy's got some chops. And then after 20 seconds, I'm like, well, that's not him. And I was like, well, I'm not going to discredit him quite yet, And then the bully that he for no reason. And then he just beats the shit out of him.
Yeah, so he's like he's targeted by the bully for no reason, no good reason.
No good reason whatsoever.
No real high school bully would give a shit about anything like
unless
that.
he had some predisposed, like, this guy did more than what we're seeing.
Unless they had a history, like, oh, maybe he did steal his girlfriend.
Maybe they had a
something.
history of violence.
Yeah,
Yeah, he didn't. Not that girl that he was.
You get 10 points for that one.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. But not only that, but then there's a scene that like you can just telegraph from the get-go so easily. Like they start getting into beef and it kind of goes on for a little too long and you just think to yourself like, we know this kid's going to beat up the bully. Like why are they dragging this out more and more than they have to? And then he beats him up. It's like, okay, I get why they did it so they can have the scene later where Vigo goes and confronts him about it, and then they can have that nice juxtaposing thing where he says, like, in this family, we don't hit people, and then he's like, no, we just have him killed, and then Vigo hits him, which is pretty funny. But then that scene where he's beating up the bully, it's like, okay, we didn't really need this to get this point across, and also his acting in that scene was just not great.
Oh my god, they're all
he's
bad.
like just trying to he's like trying to get angry, and he looks like he's pushing out a poop from his butt.
Like, thanks. I'm glad it didn't come out somewhere else.
Right. Praise the Lord.
Well, and so at that point when he beats up the bully, he knows his dad's Joey Cusack, right?
He's got his like suspicions, I think.
Is it not been?
I think it's before the scene where Carl Fogarty.
Oh, it is because he hits him, and
he hits him. The kid goes outside, and then they have him hostage.
That. Imagine if like they get into some other riff, right? Mm-hmm. Whole Carl Fogarty thing happens. They talk about it. He learns his dad's joke, and then they get into the fight. And now you're looking at, and the kid's like, all right, my dad's an evil guy. Am I an evil guy? Like, am I going to turn out like, and I now I don't even really know my dad. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what I've got in me. And that's not something that I do. So now you have a little bit of a conflict with the character of his own self.
Right.
No, we don't. We just straight line story A to B.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's just an excuse to make that scene happen later.
Yeah,
so it's able to be telegraphed so easily.
Tragic. It's awful. It's awful. And then the bully sucked. The bully, I got so mad at this thing. I think I was starting to get like a little checked out really early on because they had the baseball scene thing, which is not even like great baseball scenery.
Right.
It's like a really two weird camera shots, and it's just a pop fly, and then all of a sudden
they don't even put the camera on the ball or like show it in the air, or like show a wide shot of all the players on the field.
He didn't move. He literally stood there and threw up his glove to catch the ball. Like that's a. I was like, okay, like this is awful that we're setting this up like this, and then they're smoking weed on the corner. And he had a funny quip about what they did 100 years ago. I was like, that's kind of smart by that kid. They're really, they're showing us that he's a little bit of a thinker. And then the other kid's like, boozing it up, about to start drinking and driving. And then the guy almost hits him, and he goes.
And then the guys just stare back at him.
Not even like they're like, dude, we'd end you. And then like meekly, I don't know, man, but they were pure evil. Like I'm like, dude, what? Why?
I mean,
Why?
I like the initial interaction where like they get in the car thing and then they just like they're just staring at them. It's like, okay, they're like just emitting fear just
Who are
based
those
on
two guys,
right?
I don't know. I can't. I think he said something like that. Just sensed evil, and it's like
I don't remember it being that corny, but maybe I'm just misremembering.
Go rewatch it.
I'll
tell you right now.
It's
as bad as the baseball scene. That whole storyline could have been X. They could have did X that and then brought in more of the questioning of who is this person living in my home now that I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's pretty good as far as like a discussion of that. Was there anything? Because like literally, I don't know if I have anything else.
No.
I mean, to me, this is just a very straightforward, solid thriller film that has some issues for sure. But
no, I'm interested to hear the rating.
Oh, I have a feeling that I'm a little bit more warm on this than you are.
I think so. I think this is actually how you felt about Cold in July. I think we're on the opposite.
It's funny
because
I was making a lot of comparisons between that movie because it's a lot of very similar vibes going on.
Right, like it's straightforward. And now I know how you felt with Cold in July, where at points where you get taken out of what's going on because like. It's interesting now with what we have going on with stories in the sense that, and the good ones at least, or maybe not even the good ones, but what we're getting a little bit more now is there's a lot more, and I don't want to say philosophical, but there's more metaphors I think going on with what we're saying, and we're not getting a whole lot of just straight storylines.
Right.
The hey, we've got this 100-page script that's easily written out, that the character's kind of one-dimensional, and we, point A to point B, and we got a little bit of an adventure going on, another thriller. I mean, I think we're getting more character growth or character
We're getting a lot
development.
We're getting a lot of subtext with our movies.
Yeah, and I really appreciate it because there's movies like, and now I understand what you're saying with like Cold in July. This one was kind of that way with me and what was going on. I think that they surface level touched on things that it's like, man, they really could have had a lot more going on had they, like even Fogerty in this thing. Imagine they give him a little bit more of a backstory. I mean, I don't know if you need much more because of the mystery involved, but like if you kept him around,
yeah.
You know, so
I know. There's a lot about this movie that like I really think could have made it stand out more if it just wasn't so forgettable.
Yes.
And that's really like one of my bigger issues too, is that it's just very forgettable. It's very straightforward. That's kind of like a byproduct of it just being a straightforward thriller film with not much else going on. It's like, okay, there's not much about this film that I'm going to remember past like a year.
Probably not.
Besides like how cool Ed Harris looked in this movie and like some of the cool pulpy action scenes.
Yeah. Yeah. Which he's still got, I mean, had a knack for. I mean, that just, yeah, I think it sucks too. I don't know. It's another one of the Green Mile aspects where I don't know if he just pulled straight from the graphic novel and was like, no creativity. We're just going to run this through.
It sounds like they made some big changes, at least from the graphic novel. From what I read, Viggo Mortensen read the initial script and said, "This is just pure mayhem. We need to dial this back."
Let's get a good juxtaposition going in here with, yeah.
It's not well. It sounds like he had a lot of input in terms of like the story beats, other than just like the pulpy action.
Yeah, which, funny enough, it probably needed.
Right, exactly.
It probably could have used a little bit more. I mean, and it probably could have used a little bit more fucking action. Like, God, the kid sucked.
Yeah, you didn't like the action scene where he fights the bully?
Oh my God, dude. If anything, I'm gonna remember. I'm gonna probably just remember how bad the baseball scene was, and that kid flipping off that guy and being like, "I don't know, but they were evil."
What is it about kids' baseball scenes that like we're not too fond of? Because I did not like the one from Black Phone either, where like it starts and he's like, "Hey man, nice catch. You almost had me."
You know what it is? Like watching Paul Giamatti and the Holdovers try to throw a football. It's because actors don't have any ounce of athleticism in their body. Like, and I'm not saying that in a mean way, because like obviously if you have a competitive advantage in something, other areas of your life took a fall. That's why Albert Einstein probably wasn't good at golf. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just you have to sacrifice certain traits for other traits to grow. So I think what happens is baseball is America's pastime.
Well, Einstein would say it's all relative.
Okay, I'll give you that one.
I really had to like find a moment to squeeze it in there. I'm sorry I derailed you.
Damn, that history of violence was a good one. But like, you know, like it's America's pastime. It's very easy. Everyone knows about having a catch with your dad or having a catch with a buddy. You know, it's really one of the simplest entertainments in life is just throwing up an object back and forth. It could be a shoe. So I think what happens is you're like, well, we need something relatable, but we also have these people that don't like, it'd be like an alien trying to operate, you know, a machine doing this baseball. So we'll just make it relatable, super easy, but it comes off very dry and melodramatic or just unappealing
or just stilted.
Yeah, like it's like, oh, I really now see that these are actors in a movie.
Yeah, there's certain things in this movie going on where it kind of like takes me out of it, and I think to myself, oh yeah, I'm just watching people play pretend.
Yeah, and that's
that baseball scene and that fight scene in the hallway with the bully were two of the biggest ones.
Yeah, I agree. Outside of that, no, pretty good. I mean, my favorites. How about favorite scenes in this thing? I'll just say that right now. Both diner scenes, introduction of Ed Harris, and when the guys show up, menacing, and then William Hurt. I liked him.
William Hurt was I liked him a lot too.
I was hoping
it took me a while to recognize that was him.
Yeah,
because he's playing such a different character than what I'm used to seeing him play as.
What do you used to see him play as?
I mean, I'm just thinking of Thaddeus Ross from Hulk.
Oh, okay.
But I mean,
the general.
Yeah, it's totally a different character from like General Military Man.
It's funny too because he's actually the guy, the secretary in Civil War.
Yeah, he's the same character.
Yeah, he just got promoted to the Which is actually now I understand what you're saying. I've seen him in some other things.
Gotcha. You got a little bit more of a resume than I do.
Well, and I remembered him from this a little bit. Like I was excited. I was like, I don't remember how good he was. I just remember enjoying him, and it was the same thing, but not enough to make me like, all right, last thing and then ratings. How about the fucking the what do you call that? The twist of the neck death, and then Vigo silhouettes like a ballerina out of the door. He opens up the door. A guy rushes in. He like literally 180, like, you know, what do you call that when you grab the back of the head? Like,
I mean, you just snap the neck, basically.
He snaps the guy's neck, but in a pirouette, like 180, like does it and falls out the door like this, like in his legs up and everything. Like,
oh yeah, I think I remember that now. Yeah,
it's so bad. It's like, I don't know why, but I remember that imagery, and I saw it again. It made me chuckle again, and I was like, man, just. Yeah, if you haven't seen it when you watch it, pay attention to that. That'll give you a good laugh. Speaking of people like doing things that they don't look like they should be doing.
Let's get into ratings. What would you rate this film?
I initially had this as a 7 out of 10. This is one that for a while now, I don't think I really go back on original ratings. So I like to do off the cuff. How did I feel in the moment? This one I'd only seen once, so when I saw the title, saw the poster, I was like, oh yeah, this is a 7 out of 10. Watching it, 6 out of 10.
I had a feeling that that's where that was going.
I think this is like you with Cold in July. It's a story that really doesn't have any sort of character growth development. I think they had a lot of stuff, and it's funny too because watching Infinity Pool with Brandon, I'm like, man, both these guys. I don't know if David Cronenberg wrote this or if he had ties into it, but I'm like, both these guys have like these really rich things that are happening that they just like, well, we don't care about that. It's about this, you know? And
it's almost like the focus is on the wrong thing sometimes.
Yeah, like, you know, and
Infinity Pool especially more so, I'd say, but
oh yeah, without a doubt. There was a couple things in here that I thought that they could have really elevated that would have helped out this thing become not so dry. And yeah, there's points at this thing. By the end of it, this thing's 90 minutes, and I was like, all right, 20 more minutes. You know, like I was like,
and that's never a good sign.
Never, and that's why I bumped it down a star. So 6 out of 10.
Much like Infinity Pool, this is a 7 out of 10 for me.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm not really too far away from you in terms of ratings. I do have my issues with it. I do have my gripes. They definitely could have added more in terms of just overall expanding on either characters in certain scenes they could have included or like situations or give us a little more context as to what's going on. That way we can fill in some of the gaps that were made because this movie feels like some of it might be missing some elements. And some of the characterization, some of the acting might be a little hokey, might not be necessary, especially with like the bullying baseball scene. But at the end of the day, I think it's just trying to be a really solid thriller with some pulpy action and being led by Viggo Mortensen in a very charismatic and enthralling way. And I really do like how he performs that character. So that's kind of where I'm at. And I'd be curious if I ever revisited this in the future, how I would feel. But for right now, 7 out of 10 is my rating.
Nice.
Yeah. Speaking of ratings,
oh
boy, we get to play another game of reviewing reviews. And this will be a little more interesting because we got 2 directors, both of them with the last name Cronenberg. So I was able to get a little bit creative with some of these. So the name of the game, Reviewing Reviews, is I read off reviews that people have left for either movie, and Mac has to guess which movie the review is for. So this is our first one, and this is from IMDb. I feel I'm just gonna read like where these reviews come from.
Okay,
might help you out a little bit, might not. This one
now
is...
I will say I've read a couple reviews on there, so we'll see if one I'm like, oh, I read that one or not.
Some of these I really had to dig for.
Okay, probably not then. Surface level review reading.
So this one, they say, well enough done, but not really interesting. ... How one views a movie often deals with one's approach to the film. I made a mistake with this movie. I went in having had difficulty securing a Cronenberg movie before, waiting to get an introduction to his style. I went in expecting, based on what I've heard about Cronenberg, a stylized film. I came in expecting a theme. I was mostly disappointed on all 3 marks.
I did, and the problem is I read this one, but I don't
really?
remember. Yeah, but I don't remember if I okay.
Familiar.
damn it. Here's the problem that happened, okay? I read Infinity Pool reviews to help me out to see if I missed anything. I read the History of Violence ones because I was like, I had this higher, did I miss something? Like, why is this going down? And I was like, maybe there'd be something in here that's going to help me out. And I know that I read this one, and I don't remember what one it was for, though. I'm going Infinity Pool.
It is a History of Violence.
Damn it. Fuck. Oh, my God.
I told you these were going to be hard. They're going to give you a run for your money.
I read that one, too. Like, I remember, because I went down, I clicked on the review thing, so I started, I don't know if it was a Metascore one or, like, a Average Joe one, but I was, like, going through, and I clicked on that one thinking, like, here, this is how I feel, And then no news, nothing on it. It just says it sucks. It's like, great.
And it mentions the name Cronenberg.
Yeah.
That's why I think this is going to be fun. Okay. This one's going to be pretty short and kind of difficult. From Letterboxd. Horny and bloody, the way all films should be.
Oh, God.
That gives you nothing.
Yeah, I would, like, you think about it, it's like, all right, like, there's a scene in Wedding Crashers where he draws, like, a picture. Have you ever seen Wedding Crashers?
I have not seen the whole thing.
No. There's something that happens, and he goes,
I don't know if you could hear the disappointment in Mac's soul when I told him I hadn't watched
that movie.
Wedding
Was
Crashers.
like a classic for a while, but he goes, it's sexual and violent. That's what I think about A History of Violence. I'm like, horniness, no. But then there's I'm going to Infinity Pool on that one.
History of Violence.
Oh, God damn it.
You're 0 for 2.
Oh,
can you bring it back around? You've got.
Who the hell would call that movie? That's like the plainest movie ever.
Maybe they're thinking of the stairs scene. They get really turned on by stairs lovemaking.
It's just the gratuitous out of the shower scene for no reason whatsoever. Of course, it's horny. Horn dogs watch this thing. Yeah. Probably like an 80-year-old that did that.
So we've got 4 more to go. So you could turn this around. You could still come out positive. So this one is also from Letterboxd. I think all the rest of these are from Letterboxd.
Well, then that's even plays better into it. Oh, God.
All right. So this is a bit of a longer one, so maybe you'll have more room to move. Horny, gross, and boring, much like myself. I was extremely worried this was going to be too nasty for me in terms of twisted and stretched flesh, various goops and gels, but I found this largely boring.
That's got to be Infinity Pool.
Ding, ding, ding. It is Infinity Pool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we're 1 for 2, or 1 for 3.
1 for 3.
All right. This next one reads... I can't even imagine the damage this would have done to me if I was 2 edibles deep during this viewing.
Oh, no. That's Infinity Pool.
That is Infinity Pool.
Yeah,
Hey.
I've read that. Never done edibles, but I can't imagine saying that about A History of Violence.
That was kind of more of a giveaway. That was not to say it was a gimme, but like I knew you would get that one.
There's one scene in Infinity Pool where it's like, man, this... Actually, I think there's 2. There's the orgies.
The orgy, and then the initial like.
No, there's another surreal scene that he's like going in and out of.
Isn't that the pool scene where he's like in the process of being?
Oh, yeah, maybe that's when that was it. Yeah,
I think that's when that was it.
Okay,
because it's like doing a lot of like cutting and colors and all that stuff.
Yeah,
that freak you the fuck out. Well, like the blood, like when he's getting cloned. And everything.
Oh, yeah. Yes, that was it. Yeah.
So, yeah, that was Infinity Pool. You got that right. You're 2 for 4 right now.
Jeez, man, everyone's been... If you see where I lean on these things.
So this is a bit of a longer one coming up.
Okay.
You're going to... I have to preface this because this is a specific type of review that we can touch on after I read through it.
Okay.
So... An interesting idea benumbed by a very peculiar script, impressionism cascades into a fetishism for stupor, and incoherence becomes a placeholder for bravado, which is too bad because this film's most stunning and impactful scenes are actually its most lucid and interpersonal. There are certain sequences that evoke cinema du look, shot with more romance and visual depth than you might expect. I'm surprised I got through reading that with little flaws.
Yeah. And you think that's how our podcast should be, you know? Like, we should be talking like that.
I strive to talk like this.
I'll throw in words like that every once in a while.
Every time we record.
I'm more of a with Tolkien guy.
Yeah.
With Tolka. QA. Man, fudge. I'm really leaning towards Infinity Pool, but like there's a couple, the lucid and interpersonal, like there's no points really that I would say are like that in A History of Violence, but because I don't like how this review reads, I'm going History of Violence.
It's Infinity Pool.
God damn it.
Yeah.
Oh, I should have stuck with lucid and interpersonal. I was like, that's a dead giveaway.
I chose this review specifically because of the way it was worded.
Oh, my God.
Not only because it really doesn't give you much in the way of what movie he's talking about, it really is just difficult for most people to understand this review in general because this guy just discovered a thesaurus one day and decided, I'm going to write a review on Infinity Pool.
You got to go on this guy.
Well, like, I'm not against, like, using complicated words for the sake of, like, creating prose. I'm an English major. I know what that's like, but this reads off as someone who had to finish his English assignment in time before it was due the next day, so he just quickly looked up funny words in the thesaurus and was like, yeah, I'll use this instead of compare. Sure, why not?
We're Matt Damon and Good Will Hunting, and we just discovered the Harvard.
Yeah, this guy reads his Gordon Wood. Let me tell you, he gets his Gordon Wood every morning, huh?
Man,
it's like that scene in Always Sunny. Charlie goes like, "Oh, you like your Gordon Wood? I eat your Gordon Wood. You come here, you think you're so smart."
Oh man, that show's awesome. I don't know that scene, but it always makes me want to watch it more.
Megan and I are going through it right now. We're on season 6. We just came across one of the episodes that's banned on Hulu, so I have to find it elsewhere for us to watch.
Banned on Hulu?
Yeah, there's certain episodes that they don't have on Hulu because they viewed them as problematic.
Hulu's not getting Gladiator 2.
Yeah, well,
that whole movie's gonna be problematic.
Well, with a budget of $310 million, you can bet your ass it's problematic. All right, this is the last one. Cronenberg's identity thriller might have felt clunky at times, but the early reveal, overall brilliant performances, and exploration on the difficulties of conquering the lethal compulsion for violence makes for a nuanced and thought-provoking experience.
Now, the question is, there's so many tales to say A History of Violence. Did you throw this in here to throw me off my track? Because Infinity Pool could also fit into some of those categories.
That's for you to decide, McClain.
No, oh God!
I really like this game.
Yeah, I know, and I've been led astray. I've gone against my instinct too much, but then my instinct's wrong. Oh,
you could even it out. You could get exactly half of them right.
Is that what I got last time? Or was I 4 out of 6? I think I was 4 out of 6.
You were 4 and 6. You came out positive last time.
Yeah. I go 0 for 2 and then
so
ran
at the
table.
very least, you'll get a C if you get this right.
Shit. Read it one more time.
Cronenberg's identity thriller might have been clunky at times, but the early reveal, overall brilliant performances, and exploration on the difficulties of conquering the lethal compulsion for violence makes for a nuanced and thought-provoking experience.
I'm going History of Violence.
You are correct.
Okay. So,
History of Violence.
Yeah. I was like, there's too much in there that just screams History of Violence.
I love that I put that last, though, because it made you think if I was, like, trying to fuck with you a little bit.
Yeah,
like, is he trying to get me to say this thing when it's actually that thing?
The early reveal's the one that's what, to me, solidified it.
That's what got you?
Yeah. The early... Because there's no reveal in Infinity Pool.
This was probably the most clear out of all the reviews that I gathered that tells you what the movie is.
I will say the hardest one was the first one.
Okay.
The What a Mess.
Yeah.
That one was... and the fact that I read it, too, makes it even more infuriating.
That made it really funny.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that we did this game today.
Yeah.
So you like this game? This is a game that I think we can probably return back to.
Well, anytime that reviewing reviews, I love it. I think it's a great segment, and I like trying to guess what other people have to say about these films.
Awesome. Well, then we'll keep it going. Whenever, like, if I make a post and no one engages with it.
Yeah.
That's not passive-aggressive at you guys at all. Maybe do a little bit better.
I'm going with you guys. I'd say it's a weak year for films. I think that there's a lot of B+ films that were nominated.
Well, speaking of which, normally this would be the part of the podcast where you would get to make a recommendation, but we got to hold off because...
Wait, can I still make the recommendation and then that way we know where it's going to, or should I wait?
That's up to you. Ultimately, it's your recommendation, so you do what you think.
I don't want to forget it. This is why I want to do this now, because I have a film that I stumbled across. I've never seen. I think it's going to fit right up our alley. If you pull up IMDb, you can look at this too and just look at a couple of the titles or themes in the film.
I'll get my letterbox going.
Yeah. We'll see how kind it is on there. I don't really know. I like I said, I just stumbled across this thing, but Catherine Bigelow directed it.
Interesting. Okay.
Ralph Fiennes. Is it Ralph or Ray? Fiennes?
Are you talking about Harry Potter boy?
Harry Potter.
I thought it was Ralph Fiennes.
Yeah, Ralph Fiennes. He's in this thing. It's from 1995.
Interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
It is.
I don't recognize where it's going.
No, and it's a futuristic film dealing with 1999. It is called Strange Days.
Strange. That title sounds familiar.
It's got a very interesting poster.
Okay.
Did you see the themes that it labels?
So let me go to.
You're on Letterboxd.
Well, I just Googled it because I didn't want the Letterboxd ratings to like influence me. I guess. Let me type in "Strange Days" IMDb, and then it'll come up.
Now I'm gonna say there's a contrast between what IMDb has versus what I've seen other people talk about.
So it lists it under the tags of cyber thriller, cyberpunk, crime, and drama.
Yeah.
Intriguing.
Yeah, and Catherine Bigelow directed it, and she's got a knack for making good movies. So I'm very. This thing's been swept under the rug. I'm surprised. Like I at least would have thought that like 7 or 8 year old Mac would have heard about this on HBO at some point.
Right.
Never. I came across this one time. I was like, piqued my interest, and it sounds like there's some controversy with the film, and maybe if it's better than what it should have been, or maybe it is really good, maybe it wasn't understood. So I'm hoping that there's something there, Kyle.
All right, I'll put it on my watch list then. Okay.
Yeah.
Strange Days from Catherine Bigelow watch list. There we go.
That'll be a month from now.
Yes.
Right? So
that'll be a month from now because next episode 67, will be our Oscars Best Picture discussions. So this is an episode that we're going to do 2 weeks from now, from when we record, 2 weeks from when this episode comes out. What's up?
We were talking about Poor Things. So we're going to record on the 11th. God damn it.
Yeah, were you thinking maybe you could get it by the 12th?
Well, I'll watch it. I'll just say that. I'll watch it.
All right. If you need help, I can maybe help you with some of it.
Well, we're just saying we're gonna watch it.
Well, we're gonna watch it.
Yeah.
So yes, 2 weeks from this recording right now, and then 2 weeks from when the episode comes out will be our Oscar discussion episode. We do this every year. We discuss the 10 Best Picture nominees, and it's an episode that we record after the Oscar ceremony. So all the awards will have been given out. We will have known who won Best Picture. Part of the fun in the discussion is discussing some of the Oscars itself, but most of the meat and potatoes of the conversation is going to be around those 10 films.
Yeah.
And not to really get anybody's hopes up, because it's not confirmed yet, but possibility of a guest on the episode.
Sick.
Possibility. I'm not going to confirm it because it might not happen, but
we're not confirming or denying. We're just saying that it might happen.
It's just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
The recommendation that Mac made will be episode 68. That'll be out in a month from when this episode gets released. So be sure to check that movie out before that one. But be sure to tune in for our Oscar discussion for episode 67.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the Neon Crew podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already, and be sure to give us some 5-star ratings on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to hit us up on our various social medias on Facebook and YouTube community page. Check out our Etsy page. We got some merch still available. Wintertime. It's cold still. Get yourself a crew neck. I can scrounge something up for you if you want to get your hands on one of those. Might be a minute if I have to special order it, but if I have it available in stock, it shouldn't be too far behind. Shout out to Gideon for doing our music, and shout out to Lauren for doing our logo design. You can find their various social medias in the description below this episode. McClain, was there anything else that we needed to do before we wrap up?
WWTHD.
Bye, everyone.
Ah!